Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The present session, themed on building finance and business models, will revolve around building financing, business models, energy economics, and affordability. The low carbon growth planned at a global level to mitigate climate change requires financing opportunities, which are often constrained, leading to requirements of innovative financing mechanisms. With the passing years, decisions are made that will lock the world into high carbon development paths for years to come. New forms of policy support, new institutional arrangements, new forms of finance, and new business models are required if energy efficiency opportunities in buildings are to be exploited. On that note, I would like to invite our esteemed panelist on the dais. Mr. Saurabh Kumar, Managing Director, EESL Services Limited. Mr. Kumar is an IRS officer of 1992 batch. He has worked in various capacities in Income Tax Department, Ministry of Power, and Bureau of Energy Efficiency. He was Secretary BE during 2007 to 2010. It's an honor to have you here, sir. I request all of you to put your hands together for our moderator of the session. Our first speaker for this session is Ms. Sandra Soares, Head of Energy Cell, KfW. Ms. Soares started her career working as a consultant for UNCTAD in Geneva, Switzerland, before joining KfW headquarters in Frankfurt in 2010. In 2015, she moved to Dhaka, Bangladesh, to support the local KfW office as a senior project manager on urban and energy issues. In 2017, she joined KfW Delhi office as Senior Sector Specialist for Energy, looking after KfW's solar portfolio in India, before taking over the position of Head of Energy Cell KfW office in India 3 months ago. It's a pleasure to have you here, ma'am. The second speaker for the session is Mr. Monu Ratra, CED and CEO IIFL Home Finance Limited. At IIFL, Mr. Ratra brings a strong focus on developing and delivering customer satisfaction with ease and low turnaround time. His vision is to adapt and align the company with new technology and digital era while maintaining an everlasting culture of customer centricity. Coming from the area of architectural studies, he strongly advocates the role of green architecture in shaping the growth of sustainable living. It's a privilege to have you here, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. R.V. Deshpande, DGM Building Finance, SBI. He's looking after the building finance for residential projects, pan-India, for the last 3 years. He's associated with Housing Loan Finance of the bank under the Real Estate and Housing Business Unit. It's an honor to have you here, sir. Please have a seat. Our last speaker for this session is Ms. Apurva Chaturvedi, Senior Clean Energy Specialist, USAID. She has over 10 years of experience in clean energy and climate change sector. She has designed and managed several clean energy programs at USAID. Her area of expertise is strategy formulation, program design and management. She is currently leading the smart grids and energy efficiency portfolios of USAID's clean energy program in India. It's a pleasure to have you here, ma'am. So I would request Mr. Saurabh Kumar to take the session further.
Thank you very much for a very brief and good introduction of the session as well as the speakers. I have a arduous task to perform. We need to complete the session by 1:30 because I know 2 of my speakers need to leave at 1:30. So I will not add anything further to what has been said to introduce the session. A few requests that I would have to my speakers: please try and complete whatever presentations you have in 10 minutes so that we do have some time for interaction. So without any further ado, may I request Sandra, if you could go first.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. I'm actually very excited about being here because energy efficiency is a topic that is very close to the heart of KfW, and I will explain in a few seconds why or how. If you look at Germany, and we are the German promotional banks for the ones who don't know us, actually you cannot say energy efficiency financing and energy efficient buildings without mentioning KfW. So KfW and energy efficient buildings go hand in hand. And that is why I'm very excited to be here and to share some of the experience we have from our market, so being Germany, but also from the first project that we had here in India with the National Housing Bank. Unfortunately, the colleague is not here today. But yeah, I will try to stick to the 10 minutes. Mr. Kumar, feel free to cut me short when I get too excited or too lengthy. I would skip a little bit through the slides at the beginning due to the time constraints, and we'll try to focus more on the second part. Just 2 words. So for the ones who don't know KfW, we are the promotional bank of Germany, so a state-owned, a government-owned bank in Germany. And we were founded after World War II with the aim to reconstruct Germany. And out of that mandate, a few other mandates arose, for example, implementing on behalf of the German government the financial cooperation, development cooperation, so supporting the development in other countries, such as India. But this is still important because when you look at what we do, you will see that a large chunk, so that there, for you it's the left side, the left side is domestic promotion. And here it is 2 of the flagship programs that we have, or what KfW stands for, is the support to the so-called German energy transition. So the switching to renewables and improving energy efficiency. That's why I say in Germany you cannot say energy efficient buildings without mentioning KfW. That is one of the very large programs where we use federal money, so money from our federal government, to promote energy efficiency in all sorts of buildings, but one focus is really also the residential sector. And I am part of KfW Development Bank, so the right part. We are responsible for supporting international financing, development cooperation, so financing public entities in partner countries. But of course, we can draw there on experiences we have from our domestic sector. So maybe to start with something very basic. Why is energy efficiency in the building sector, and especially in the residential sector, such an interesting topic also for us? Well, first of all, of course, the building sector and residential sector being part of that is one of the main consumers of energy. So in Germany, it's 1/3 of the primary energy consumption, which is happening in buildings, especially, of course, Germany being a very cold country, heating. So if we reduce the energy consumption in the building sector, we can support the targets of the Energiewende, of the German energy transition, but also help through reduction of CO2 emissions to reach the climate change targets and CO2 emission targets of the German government. That is why also the German government is providing a lot of funding to promote energy efficiency through us. Then one of the other reasons is very simple. There are solutions available, and these are not too expensive. So if you have the solutions available, there is a market, there is an interest, so why not explore it? One of the other reasons is, of course, it doesn't only affect the climate change or the CO2 emissions energy, but it also affects the comfort, living comfort. You can, if the AC doesn't have to blow full time all the time, or in Germany the heating system doesn't need to work so much, which also the air gets influenced by that, it's not very comfortable, you can improve comfort. Employment generation. In Germany, there were some calculations made, not only in the residential building sector, but in overall energy efficiency, has created about 400,000 jobs. And of course, reduced fuel imports. I think that is pretty much for all energy efficiency one of the targets also. And then why it's interesting for us as a bank also is because, of course, in residential buildings, not so much in commercial buildings, which might differ a lot, but in residential buildings, the consumption patterns are pretty similar if you remain in one region, one climatic zone. So it is rather simple to have standardized financial products to address the needs. So, as I said, in Germany, we have a very, very large program on promoting energy efficiency in residential buildings. There, we do look at both, at newly constructed buildings and at refurbishment of existing buildings, because we have a very large stock of existing buildings that have actually a very bad energy performance. And it is possible to reduce energy consumption in heating in these old buildings by 80% through these energy efficiency measures, through better insulation, through better windows, etc., through newer heating system, control systems, etc. So a large part for us in Germany is also refurbishment, but also newly constructed buildings. And how does it work? The basic concept is you agree on a standard. So we have a regulation and the energy saving ordinance, which kind of gives the outlay of basic or minimum requirements that buildings have to meet. For example, if you get a building permit, you have to show that it complies with these minimum requirements. And then there's the so-called efficiency house, the KfW efficiency house, which is very well known, which takes the reference and then says if you have certain savings on top of this reference, so if your building is better on energy consumption than the reference building, you get some sort of promotion or some sort of financial incentives to invest there. That can be the interest rate, even though, to be honest, right now the interest rate is not the, let's say, the primary part that would incentive that would interest anyone, because in Europe, of course, the interest rates are so low, even in the building sector, that that is not really anything that is very attractive right now. But then you get, according to how much energy saving you have in comparison to the reference, you get a partial debt relief. So you have to present your design of the measures of the new house, get it certified, show it to KfW, and if it complies, you can avail a certain amount of funds at a preferable interest rate. By the time you complete it, you can get partial debt relief, depending on how much more energy saving you have as compared to the reference. And once it's audited, the completed house, and the auditor says, yes, this is the level that was achieved, then you can get another step of partial debt relief. That is, and the whole idea behind it is you create a virtual twin of your building with the same wall sizes, same window area, same features, and then you compare your build, but a standard, let's say a standard technology, and then you compare your building, the energy consumption and performance with this theoretical virtual twin. And then depending on the level you achieve of energy savings, you are entitled to these promotional parts. Yeah, so what I wanted to point out, I mean, in Germany, it's really an elaborate system. We started with the promotion of energy efficiency in buildings in 1990, so a long time ago. And of course, you don't start with a full-fledged at the very beginning. You start simple, and then as time goes by, you have more criteria, you learn something. We realize quality assurance is a big issue. You need to follow up, you need to make sure that maintenance is being done properly. You need to make sure that in the end what has been promised or agreed in the design, of course there might be changes during the construction, that this is all reflected and still the building complies with the requirements. So there's now in Germany, there's an elaborate system on information, on energy energy audits, training programs, and very specific rules and procedures on how to do that. Focal points for partner banks, so they can discuss with us on how to do and implement the program. So in Germany, it's, let's say, a very well-established system. And this has actually led to, and as you can see in the numbers, I mean, very elaborate, you can see a lot of money has been spent from the government side. Okay. Then, because I have to be quick, There was a first program which was launched in 2013 in 2010 with the National Housing Bank to try to set up something similar in Germany. And the approach was very similar. So also the idea, you have a software tool where you have a standard building and then you compare the actual buildings with the standard building. If certain energy efficiency levels are achieved, then the building gets a stamp, the certification of being an energy efficient building. And can avail the financing. And of course that went also with a lot of training, marketing, campaign strategy and support from consultants on implementing this program. This is a little bit how it went. The idea was in the beginning to have a 30% energy efficiency as compared to the standard as the benchmark, but that was later reduced because it was seen that a lot of times it was more passive measures like wall insulation, etc., that was done, roof insulation, and not so much active measures such as ACs, fans, PV plants on the rooftop that would bring the additional energy efficiency requirements. The tool that was adapted, there's some things there, and results, it was fully dispersed by 2013. A total of 1,900 loans were refinanced in 12 buildings. And the average energy savings with only passive measures, so walls, roof, windows, was mostly was 21%. If you had active measures such as energy efficient ACs, LEDs, etc., it was 34%. And in total about 22%. So what we learned from that, you need to have the right incentives, standards, enforceable, countrywide standards. If there's a regulation, they help. You need to do the follow-up, monitoring, and quality assurance. You need to find the right partners, definitely, ensure that there's a proper coordination, because of course it is a cross-section of energy, of housing, of banking, so you need to have the proper coordination and technical support, as in training, providing training on the tool, on energy efficiency, etc. And then just to conclude, not only looking at NHB, but in general, there are some recommendations. For example, looking who is your target group, who do you really want to target, and who has the incentive to actually invest into energy efficient measures. Look at the viability, how much does it cost, and then again, who would be the right person or the right target group for that. Look at what is already existing in the country. Can you build up on that? Is there a loan already, like a home loan program that maybe can be scaled up? Are there already energy auditors or architects that can be used with additional training and can be easily upscaled, so where this can be added? Look at really the training needs. Don't underestimate that. If people are insecure, it's more difficult to pick up for the program. Use easy promotion criteria, smart criteria. Use an adapted software tool. Think about different climatic zones in India. That's very important. Of course, Kerala is completely different to the Northeast, someone like that. Marketing. I think that is one of the main conclusions also. People need to know about it. People need to know that, and that is one of the things we also found out. A lot of measures here in India can be done without, the cost increases are not a lot, but the savings are a lot. But people need to be aware about that. They need to know how they can avail the funds. What do they need to do? And that is very important to have the target group informed. As a conclusion, just to wrap up, so from our experience, promotional programs to support energy efficiency in buildings and residential buildings can be very effective and very successful. They can contribute to implementing regulations that otherwise might be difficult to enforce, especially, I mean, insulation, for example, you put concrete, you patch it up, and then what is behind it? It's very difficult to enforce. But if people have a financial incentive, they are more willing to go that extra mile and to accept the audit than if it's just regulation. And in India, as I said, many energy efficient measures come at very low cost, but can have a big saving. So we really feel that a dedicated energy efficiency program for residential buildings makes a lot of sense. There is the business case for it, and that's why we're also in discussion of potential other partners we could have. And if anyone is interested to have more information on that, I'm more than happy. Please feel free to contact me and we can discuss. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra, for, for a very quick update. And I think if I were to summarize a couple of things which really stand out in your presentation is a very innovative financing mechanism that you brought in Germany, which later on was also tried in India, is incentivizing higher efficiency. I mean, that's something which is really, really good, and I think that it really needs to progress beyond the first line of credit that you had with NHB. Also, you spoke very rightly of the compliance mechanism, because if there is an incentive, there has to be a very robust compliance mechanism, something that, again, India needs to learn much more from countries like And one last thing which I think all of us forget when we put together an energy efficiency proposal is that there are so many co-benefits of energy efficiency. You talked about jobs. You talked about 400,000 jobs in Germany. Our Ujala program in 1 year created about 100,000 jobs. I think we need to talk more and more about it, but let me thank you and turn to my privilege to call upon Mr. Ratra, who is the ED and CEO of IIFL Home Finance.
Thank you very much. And I think after listening to Sandra's presentation, you really envy that how you're going to see this ecosystem developing in our country as well. So I'll just give you a small brief. Although this program, which was preceded by the session by the architects, I think it was very inspiring. I think financing is the logical move forward for making things happen. Otherwise, they would all remain boardroom discussions and conference room discussions. I think if you have to take it forward, financing will play a very, very important role. We at IIFL Home Finance, we are a retail housing finance company. Just to give you a brief, we have almost nearly funded about 1 lakh households. New houses, we have almost funded almost 1 lakh. We focus on affordable housing. That's a big play. That means homes which are below 20 lakhs is what has been our mainstay to do this. And currently, our book is nearly about 18,000 crores. That's how the book size looks like currently. In about last 1.5 years, we've taken up this subject very, very closely. Very unlike for a housing finance company to talk about green buildings and energy efficiency. But we really realize that this is something which is there for the future, and it's also for the larger good, and which we believe is also our moral and ethical responsibility to take this forward. As I've worked in a lot of companies, housing finance companies, but I think nobody took it up in the way which we have envisaged and which we're looking at. We are primarily, I'm sure everybody's aware, that we are looking at extreme urbanization in this country, which is happening. And we know that there's an opportunity of 11 million new homes which are going to be developed in this country, which are going to be required in the urban areas alone. So that's huge. It's 1.1 crore. When we are talking about green buildings, the realization which has come about is green in India is still upmarket. You will see 5-star, 7-star hotels to be certified, LEED certified buildings. You will see upmarket residential buildings to be green building certified, but it's hardly, almost negligible work in affordable housing. And if most of the houses are 99% of our homes are going to be built in affordable, if they are not green, even if you are living in a green home, when you step out, it's going to be an ecosystem which is going to be devoid of the larger benefit. So hardly any work has happened in the affordable housing space. And we got deeper into this and we tried to understand and see that what really are the challenges over here. And there are multiple challenges in this. The first and foremost is policy. When we went on the ground, just to give you a brief, we are tied up about more than 7,000 developers in this country, across the country. They're all into affordable homes. That means they would be selling homes below about $60,000 to $70,000 per home would be below that. So we have a good bouquet of projects across the country, about 7,000 of them, which we deal with and we interact with. And we try to understand the whole thing. Unfortunately, there is no policy, because India is a very vast country and you have states with the individual policies attached to it. there were two situations. One situation was there was no incentive being given to the developers. The other situation was the incentives were there, but they were not aware of this. So the developers was slightly or totally unaware of what really you can do in case of green buildings. So policy was one area which we thought that is a big challenge, or connecting the policy or making people aware. The second, which was rightly, was the awareness part of it, that the people don't know that, okay, in affordable, there are preconceived notions about affordable means expensive. And in affordable housing, how can you make expensive, how can you sell expensive homes? Then you're not going to be able to sell your homes. So there's a basic disconnect with the developers. Interestingly, in India, the affordable housing developer space is largely very local. You don't have very large developers, you have very local developers. So their thought process, their psyche is very different. And they need to, they want to have fast turnarounds and ensure that they are not outpriced by the competitor. Because the two kind of awareness, one is at the developer end, and then their ability to transmit the benefit to the consumers, and they appreciate it, even if it is slightly expensive, whether they'll pay or not. Because if anything which is not financially viable, it's not going to work. It's as simple as that. Then we realized that there needs to be a lot of localization. There's an ecosystem of certifying agencies in this country, and now it's very encouraging that now you have different standards. You need to have different standards for affordable homes. You can't have the same standard which you have put for the larger luxury homes or other commercial buildings. You need to localize it, make it very local. And also, to reduce the cost, you need to suggest and have materials which are locally available, so you bring down the cost of construction as well, overall. So a very larger strategy needs to be put up in this country in terms of localizing these certification standards to fit into affordable homes. You can't have one size fit all across the board. So there's a lot of work to be done over there as well. Then the final thing, which is the most important thing, is if you want to make it work, they should be seeing an incentive over this, that why should they do this? And they should see at both ends, whether it's at the construction finance level or the green mortgages for the individual customers, both have to go hand in hand. I'm sure Sandra's example of Germany looks very beautiful, very idyllic, but we have a lot of distance to cover at the moment to make that really happen. So what did we really do at IIFL Home Loans? So we did something. We said that how are you going to do this? We took on ourselves that we would be the platform and we would be the converging platform for bringing together all the people, all the stakeholders together. So we started something which is called Kutum. Kutum is really like an abode. It's an abode of yours. So we started this program which is Kutum. In that we put everybody together. One of the, Mr. Ashok Bilal was very kind, and he has been present in both our Kutum chapters already. So we got together, the audience was developers, purely affordable housing, and then we got in Mr. Ashok Bilal to tell the technicalities of it, how you can benefit from it. Then we also had the opportunity of National Housing Bank also coming and talking about this. And we also had EDGE, which is the IFC promoted certification agency. They also contributed to this. And we stitched this together as a one-day program for educating the developers about starting from awareness to how they can do about, how they need to go about this, and what are the further steps they need to do to make this happen. So what we also did was we have incubated a small department within our company as well, which is purely meant for this. It is not for loans, but it is about educating these developers, because as I said, they're very local. They would need a hand-holding and that confidence that yes, this can happen in affordable housing. So we did that. So Kutum is something, one initiative we thought that will put all things together, and only then we can talk about it. But if you don't hold them together and take them to conclusion, it's no good. So after that, we already are, and we are working on the aspect of how these developers can be financed. Because as I said, looking at the standards which are available, there are variations of the cost implications which are there to the developer. They can vary from 5% to 15% depending on what standard you want to adopt. So we have worked out a developer finance program for these developers who will opt for these programs, and they will take this forward. So we are saying that we would like to finance these developers who are building this, because as much you create retail awareness, developer is the community which is building numerous homes. And I think what has happened in our country in the last couple of years, in the affordable housing space, the government has taken some amazing initiatives. It's never been done before. It's been 2 decades for me in mortgage market, but I think it's been never been as good for affordable housing as it has been under Housing for All, under the PMAY scheme. There again, those subsidies are very readily available there, and we are one of the leading subsidy providers as well on the retail loans for affordable housing in EWS and LIG. And the lot of incentives which are given to the developers to come forward in this affordable space. So now is the time for us to step forward and say that, okay, we will bring them all together, and we are first giving them the literacy. We are giving them the knowledge support that how you need to go about these programs. And thirdly, we are adding the developer finance to it. Then the larger thing, another aspect which is there for affordable housing, which is in general, which is a challenge, is that, okay, you want to provide homes to them. This may not be pertaining to green building, but also is how do you cater the need of these people? A lot of these people don't get financial inclusion because of the kind of income levels or the income methodologies in which they earn. So we have customized programs for this segment eventually, because even if they build homes, eventually the people who are going to buy these affordable homes should be able to get finance available as well. In India, you have a very multifarious and largely informal income segment prevailing in this country, which is, as they say, it's about almost 80% of people are in informal segment, salaried and self-employed put together. So we have a very customized program which is called Swaraj. Under these home loans, we ensure that these, at the end of the day, even if those homes are built, how do they get financial inclusion? So this program is just meant for that you are able to get these people to get the loans which they need. So you are trying to complete the circle slowly on that. And then we have this PMAY thing, which is there, which I discussed with you. So here again, we have been on the financial inclusion, we have been ensuring that we have almost done almost 20,000 homes. Subsidy has been provided through us, nearly about 440 crores, which makes us the second largest in the EWS and LIG space. And the good thing is, under this subsidy program, every home needs to have a women co-owner. So I'm sure by default, we are also encouraging the women empowerment to own homes as well. And the final thing was that how do you make this happen? So we have used fintech, that's the technology piece, that you can reach out to these people as far and wide you can. So we have a tablet solution that means about 40 to 50 minutes, you are able to give a home loan decision right at the doorstep of the customer itself. So if you put all these four dots together, so I think educating the people, creating developer finance for green buildings, having individual programs where you will be able to fund these people individually, and finally they having the technology to have that reach. I think we feel that we should really be there to give a start. And also the fact that, which we discussed, was that we are also engaging with the local government and trying to, whatever are the issues or the opportunities which are there with these developers, we are trying to communicate to the government as well to customize these things. Then finally, it is the solution which I had discussed was policy, research, partnerships, and thought leadership. So by doing this, we feel that we'll be able to give a solution of a sustainable living. Although a housing finance company, but I think we can do a lot. Yes, it is not all charity. There's a financial reason as well. But overall, I think by doing this, we'll do the larger good as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratra. I think the key takeaways for me is the fact how beautifully you have stitched together the whole 4 elements of awareness, handholding, reaching out to people, and actually facilitating all this. The other part of incentivization, yes, one way is what Sandra mentioned. The other one is the PMJ subsidy. But can we also think of as a sustainable incentive? And let me, since all the experts are here, we did a study that if there is an energy efficient building, And if the distribution utility gives a 10% reduction in the, or a rebate in their bill, it actually works out better for the utility because the peak demand goes down. So if something like this happens, then those dwelling units will have a premium, they will have a premium on rent, and you can sustain a much larger market and not look for subsidies all around. So my suggestion would be, if you could at some point in time, let me turn myself to Mr. Deshpande from SBI. Sir, all yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, builder finance and business models are presently what we are doing and what we can do for the green building. Just I have discussing some points. See, at present we are financing for the residential as well as the commercial buildings. And in the residential, office space, hotels, malls and warehouses, whereas in residential, individual houses and the multi-storied buildings. And both banks as well as the HFCs, what Monu Ratra was telling, we are funding for the real estate business, that the building financing. The funding is based on the techno-economic viability study. See, basically technical aspects include architectural design, structural design, cost of construction and required state government approvals. The economic viability, what is the cost, how much sales they are doing, how much they are going to earn, will take and payback of the period and the IRR, which will help us to give the loans to the developers. And the residential project funding is based on the cash budget. So because it is funded by the promoter and the bank as well as the advance from the customers. So usually we give for a period of 3 to 7 years to the developers, depending upon the size of the project. And we are also funding to the home buyers. We started from 2004. Now, State Bank of India is having 3,62,000 crore exposure to the housing loans. So almost all developers we have tied up for the housing loans, and we are funding for the housing loans, both individual houses as well as the apartments. And the rate of interest is the lowest. And green building, it should include the features of efficient use of energy, water and waste management, and indoor environment air quality also should be there. So what are the initiatives taken in India? The first thing is ECBC code is already in place in 2007. Most of the commercial buildings are using the ECBC codes, and environment impact assessment notification of 2006 made all the builders to follow the environment clearance. Now recently, and most of the MNCs, they are demanding green buildings. So these green MNCs and these two acts made most of the big developers to go for the green building. Whereas in the residential, still because small or affordable housing are constructed at some places, green building initiatives is not so much. Now, central government has come up with another notification in the environment clearance notification, wherein about 20,000 square meters, up to 50,000 square meters, the developers have to follow certain principles in the energy efficiency and green building. And this has to be certified by the department, local administration at the time of giving a completion certificate. So if all the parameters which have been mentioned in the energy efficiency notification, so at least we will be in a position to save 20 to 30% energy in that one, and whatever green related aspects are there will be taken care of. So if you look at that one, 31% of the population is living in the cities. It is going to increase to 50% by 2030. And urban household expected to double by 2030, population increase, economic development, urbanization will increase in the demand for constructing the built up area. Then housing for all by 2022, smart city and other things, and Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana subsidies is also making a lot of construction in the country. So if you look at that one, 33% of the electricity consumption is from the building side. 24% is residential. So lot of green initiatives are required in the residential building so that the energy can be saved. So if you look at that one, LEED, GRIHA and IGBC are already rating many of the projects in the country. And we are also working out with the financial institutions of the other countries and ours for getting some funding so that we will be in a position to pass on some interest benefit to the developers as well as the home buyers. See, if you look at that one, we are the first bank to start for the solar water heaters. So in a housing loan, now we have made it part of the housing loan so that people can install the solar water heater. And now we are also coming about with working in the SME segment for giving the solar rooftop financing. And now presently we are also working with KFW for funding the developers as well as the home buyers for residential projects, so that we will be in a position to lend at a cheaper rate. So whatever we are doing in SBI, we fund based on all the approvals should be in place before starting funding the developers. So to that extent, developers will adhere to the laws of the country. And RBI also has instructed to us whatever energy efficient materials like fly ash that has to be incorporated in the buildings. See, some of the state governments are coming up with incentives. Maharashtra government is coming up with an incentive of giving 2.5 to 7.5% rebate in the development charges if the project is certified by GRIHA and LEED. And also they want to give a subsidy incentives in the tax for a period of 5 years to the extent of 5 to 10%. It is in the draft stage, certainly they are going to do it. Similarly, other municipal corporations and states are also giving some benefits to the developers. So in SBI also, we are also following up the green building, this one. Energy efficiency initiatives have been done here. We are reducing the paper consumption, greenhouse gas emissions. All our ATMs are with the solar panels. So way forward, I think more number of energy auditors are required so that at each stage, as per the law, the things have been done. And green rating agencies should audit the project till completion, and thereafter, we should create awareness in the public about importance of green building and energy efficient buildings. So the home buyer should demand from the developers that we want this type of buildings. And use of star rated air conditioners or LED bulbs will help in saving the energy and reduction of the carbon emission. Now RERA has implemented in almost all states, and it will be a better place for creating awareness among the public, as they are now planning for rating the developers and the projects, and grant to the financiers. So what we are working out with the KFC, skill development and institution training is also a must, so that awareness will be created for green building. Construction equipment that supports sustainable buildings, funding also should start for that. And also incentives and awards should be there for the developers who construct and also the home buyers who are buying the energy efficient buildings. So thank you.
Deshpande, I think it's really heartening to note that the largest bank in this country has so much interest in sustainable housing and financing. We really compliment SBI for this. The other part which you very nicely put up is the fact that 70% of this country is yet to be built. You mentioned 441 million people turning up into cities and mega cities. From the government's perspective, this is the time to really change, leapfrog, and go to the best technology and sustainable living. So let me thank you once again for your thoughts. Apurva ji, may I request you for your presentation?
Thank you, Saurabh ji, and thank you for this opportunity here. Being the last speaker in any panel is is advantage and a disadvantage both, but I would consider it an advantage because most of the esteemed speakers have really covered the length and breadth of financing and business models here. So that makes my job much easier. But let me tell you, I don't represent a bank here. I am from USAID, which is the development foreign assistance arm of the US government. And probably there is a rightful place for that because many of the speakers have touched upon the fact that even before financing kicks in or a business model kicks in, there are a lot of enabling pieces to even set the tone for, let's say, in this case, a green building or a building energy efficiency portfolio. So rightly, as Mr. Deshpande pointed out, that this concept of green, for instance, was not there a couple of decades before, which we are now talking so eloquently about, and there are a lot of conferences happening around that. So, I mean, we could take a little bit of pride from the fact as an agency that USAID has been at the forefront of building energy efficiency for now more than 2 decades. The whole concept of green building, so to say, evolved from some of the work that we did with the private sector as well as with the government. So we had a both pull and push kind of a strategy where we enabled or tried to enable some of the policy regulatory pieces accompanied with a market-driven approach of how private sector could get into this whole concept of greening, energy efficiency, net zero energy, as we moved from one stage to the second. So the whole journey began with in 2000, and which resulted in the first Energy Conservation Building Code, ECBC, which was referred to in one of the presenters. 2007 was something that we supported the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and the Ministry of Power on its development. And we can say that last year, the revision, the first update of that code for the commercial buildings happened again with our technical assistance under another of our bilateral program, that was ECBC 2017. So that's the push which is also needed for any sector in terms of the right kind of, so as rightly pointed out by one of the speakers, that you need to have policy, you have to have research, you have to have awareness. All these pieces need to fit in the puzzle. Only then you have a sort of the right kind of investment environment created where banks and others and lenders can start, capitalizing on the portfolio of projects that are going to come out. So, so that was the push thing that we kind of supported. But then from the market point of view, the first green building in the country was also set up with USAID's assistance to the Andhra government and to the private sector. So that was the CII GBC in Hyderabad. And that kind of kicked off the entire green building movement. So we now have a great footprint of green building movement. And in the ECBC 2017 that was launched last year, we introduced the concept of the near zero or the net zero energy buildings, which again evolved after a lot of, let's say, awareness building and outreach on the whole concept of what a net zero or a near zero would mean for India. It would mean differently for different countries. So we initiated and kickstarted those discussions and deliberations with the industry, with the government, with the private sector, with academia and all. And that resulted in government actually setting up that as a target, one of the target in the ECBC 2017 as one, not a mandatory, but a voluntary target, but which actually points the market towards that this is the way the industry is going to move towards a near zero kind of a future or a net zero or even an energy positive kind of buildings. So with that context, as I said, I don't represent a bank, so I'm not going to talk about financing, per se financing, because we have enough experts who've already done that. I don't think I'm even equipped to do that. But let me just touch about some of the things that we are aware of and we've been doing. So in terms of preferential loans, so there is, already it's been talked about that the building owners could be given an additional sort of a concession, with a concessional lending interest rate, a loan, so that, which is like a top-up if they undergo some energy and efficiency projects within the buildings or a retrofit or whatever. And it could be available both as finance or refinance option. And already KFW has already pioneered this concept, so I don't want to get into that. It's been talked about. The other thing is tax incentives, where the building owners can receive some tax incentives for energy efficient building technologies. There's also a model where the government or municipality secures funding for owners through private capital. And one of the examples that I would like to highlight, which was there under Obama administration in US, was the US PACE program, the Property Assessed Clean Energy, where a ESCO would actually identify some cost-effective energy efficiency option or solutions, and then they would approach the city authorities or the municipalities for it. The city authority would then sort of demark an area which they will consider as an area where the owners can receive some financing for energy efficiency solutions, and then banks, private sector banks, can provide 100% finance to the buildings. So this was something that has been practiced in US in a number of states. The other model, which I am a little hesitant to now talk about, because the man here, Saurabh ji, himself is the driver and the visionary behind it, who's really sort of taken up the ESCO model, or the energy service company model, to heights unparalleled probably in the world now, the kind of implementation projects that ESL itself is doing. And we are very happy to partner with ESL on a lot of their initiatives, particularly on the building energy efficiency, as well as their super efficient appliances initiative. So I don't know whether I'll be the right person to talk about it, but then since I'm here, let me do that. So the ESCOs, of course, could be, so in general, ESCO is an energy service company, which could be a public sector entity, it could be a private sector entity. And they are the ones who take on the job of getting the finance and the technical resources to actually bring in energy efficiency technologies in any sector. Here we are talking about buildings with really almost zero upfront cost to the building owners. And this could be on an energy service savings performance contracting mechanism, where the ESCO gets the returns on deemed savings or actual savings, and the savings after the ESCO has really had their cost recovery goes to the owner. And as I said, ESL being the largest public energy service company in the country, and I'm sure their footprint is all across the globe now with the UK and many other countries. Their building energy efficiency program is one of the flagship program, which is really being seen as one of the greatest success stories of how market could be transformed through a ESCO model. And I think if I'm right, about 10,000 public buildings have been so far retrofitted in India itself by ESL through this model, where ESL offers 100% financing on the upfront cost of all energy efficiency retrofits. They provide the appliances, the energy efficient appliances, at much discounted prices, and then also takes care of them, maintains them for a period of 5 years. And then the cost is recovered over a period of 5 years from the savings that come in through the energy savings. This is the impact which ESL's program has actually accrued so far. And if you can see, the numbers are really a story themselves. And we are very happy, Saurabh ji, to partner with you on this initiative of yours. So around 10,000 buildings completed, many more to go. But more important, from the it's not the number of 10,000, but it's the whole framework of how a retrofitting building and energy efficiency retrofitting program can be implemented on ground. That's the crucial part of it. That's the milestone, I would say, that ESL has already achieved. And with that business model and that implementation framework, so to say, of how to go about large-scale deployment programs is something that any ESCO could actually learn from ESL. And that also is triggering a whole lot of, let's say, another ESCO market in the country itself. So as they go about appliance replacement and things like that, that also is generating a lot of vibrancy within the market for energy efficiency technologies. So I won't talk about much, but the second model also, again, the business model is something that we've been supporting ESL on, but that's the model that they've created, the bulk technology procurement. How do you bring the cost down of a new technology or of something new in the market through the whole strategy of demand aggregation and then going in for bulk procurement. So that is something ESL has been, and their Ujala story is a great success, already well proven, being emulated all across. But what is important is how do you get the right specifications, the technical specifications right for any appliance, any new technology, and then add on to that a demand aggregation strategy, and the two coupled together can actually bring down the prices at a very competitive level. Something that Ujala has already seen when they started was more than 300 plus, and then it was brought down to almost 50 rupees. So that's a great success story. But going forward, of course, there are many other new areas, particularly in the cooling sector. If we look at India, it's the demand for cooling that's really accelerating at a pace which is like unprecedented in the entire probably Asian region, or even probably in the entire Indo-Pacific region in India. And that's a market that, you know, with his foresight, sort of sightedness, he's already tapped into, and that's where, you know, ESL has already come up with their first tender and the first procurement of the super efficient air conditioners. And so that's the new product that's already been brought about in the market, and we were again happy to support ESL on the technical specifications, the demand aggregation strategy for the super efficient air conditioners. But what is more important is not just, you know, and the first kind of product that has come up, it's still for institutional sales, but the prices have come down. And if you can look at this figure, the product cost, though still is a little higher, on the higher side, it's just the first phase of the air conditioner, and we expect that it will come down even as we move to the second phase and the third phase, as we learn from each of the cycles. But if you look at the ownership cost, that has come down substantially again. But more importantly, there is a higher efficiency standard that's been brought to the market. That's important. And that has triggered a whole range of manufacturers to start looking at this new product category. And many other, apart from the ones who won this tender, that was not important, but it has really triggered the market to start announcing new products of similar ICR value or even better. So it's like a market transformation for energy efficiency in the true sense, which ESL is bringing about through their bulk procurement strategy. So just to end up this all work that we are doing with ESL and with many other agencies, but particularly on the financing and the business model, and particularly on the building energy efficiency and super efficient ACs, is being done under a bilateral initiative called Market Integration and Transformation for Energy Efficiency, METRI, which is in true sense a US-India METRI friendship program, and which has three key areas. One is energy efficiency in buildings, both on the regulatory side, on the ECBC support, on moving the sector towards net zero or near zero targets for the new buildings, and also on large public retrofitting program. The second component is on sustainable cooling, where, as I said, it's about supporting large-scale deployment of super efficient cooling technologies. To begin with, this air conditioner, which we supported ESL, was in the 1.5 ton split AC variety, but many more, I'm sure, will come as the program evolves and as, you know, we'll get into it even in a larger way. And the third component, as was pointed out by the earlier speakers, is the consumer engagement, the outreach, the training, the capacity building, which are all soft skills, but they are not the, let's say they are one of the most important elements of any program to happen, that even if you have the most super efficient AC for that matter, but if the person who comes and installs the AC doesn't have the right skill to install it in the fashion in which AC will work at an optimum or the best possible efficiency level, there is no point in having an efficient AC at all. So right from the technician level up to, let's say, the level where these policy decisions are being made, there is a requirement for skill development at all levels. Then the capacity building for energy efficiency, design, construction, and operation of the buildings itself. And most importantly, how do we even change there's a whole emphasis on behavior modification for energy efficiency amongst the consumers, and then also how to tell the consumer, like B's star rating program has really brought about a whole change in the way the consumers think about appliances today. So they look at labels, and that's one of the, apart from the costing, but that star label is one of the criteria for them to actually choose their appliances. So this whole consumer engagement and consumer outreach about new evolving products, higher efficient products in the market, even if they're there, they will sit on the shelf unless the consumer knows about it. So there's a whole emphasis on this aspect under our program as well. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Apurva. First of all, let me personally thank you on my behalf and on behalf of ESL for being so kind to us, whatever. But the standout feature here is how much important these engagements with international bodies, whether it is KFW or technical structuring of projects, is something which is extremely important. And as we head towards urbanization and getting into mega cities, I think these engagements will only improve the quality of our offerings of all stakeholders here. So, for example, you rightly mentioned that it was the USAID support that brought out the ECBC. I must also acknowledge that it was GIZ support that actually helped India to have its Energy Conservation Act. And there have been multiple such instances where support has been given. For example, KFW supported ESL when nobody else was willing to fund ESL. That's about 5 years ago. So these things are extremely important, having this kind of a dialogue on an ongoing basis. With this, we do come to an end, and let me first compliment all the 4 speakers that we really stuck to our time. We have completed the session flat in 1 hour. If there are any burning questions, 1 or 2 we can take, because I know 2 of my panelists need to leave. Please be very brief, introduce yourself, and direct your question to whoever. So maybe gentleman there. Can you use the mic, please?
I have question to State Bank of India. If you find there is a great potential for home buyers, okay, why don't you make a subsidiary company to construct the houses and provide to the people? Because we know the developers like JP Associates, Unitech, Amrapali. These examples are in our mind. How lot of people have become victims. Still, the banks are taking the EMIs. Since last 3 to 4 years, people are not getting home. So instead of funding to the people to buy the home, why don't you make a subsidiary company and act like a developer?
Okay. Can we have the second question? If you can just note it down, let's see. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gautam from KPMG. My quick question is, right to all the panelists, we have an understanding that all green buildings are energy efficient building, but not all energy efficient buildings are green buildings, right? So here we have spoken mainly about green building financing, and if at all if I construct a building which is only energy efficient, so will I be eligible for financing support from you banks? Second, subsidiary question, we have only spoken about residential sector here, housing mainly. Nowadays, since ECBC 2017 is launched and most of the states in India are adopting it and they're getting notified, and there will be a compulsion and mandatory law to ensure that there is a green ECBC compliant construction happening. So are we also looking into commercial building segment, or we are right now sticking to residential? Thank you.
Any last question before I hand it over to my panelists? No. So maybe you can go first.
See, we are a lending agency. We cannot start a company for development. First thing. Second one, for all these old issues, RERA has come into picture. RERA is already issuing the notices and other things. So whatever old that has happened will certainly come out of the problems within 1 or 2 years. Now, as per the RERA, the people have to keep 70% of the funds in the collection account, whatever they are receiving from the customers. So certainly going forward, I don't think this type of issue will happen. Second one, about the funding for the commercial aspect, Certainly, we are funding the commercial buildings, and mainly our more funding is in the commercial than the residential at present. So we want to do both simultaneously.
Mr. Ratra, would you like to, on the second question? That
Yeah. So as far as you mentioned about the green buildings and energy efficient buildings, I think for any financial institution, everybody has a domain of expertise. And also when you engage with certain agencies where the line of credit flows to you, right? So certain standards would be predefined in a certain way. Otherwise, we won't be fully competent, and we would not like to enlarge our scope of understanding energy efficient buildings, which is an independent standard, which every building will have its own. So it'll be, it should be there, yes, but how practical and feasible it is to have a common standard to be able to fund such buildings, I think is going to be a task. Again, I would like to add one more thing about the commercial and the residential buildings is that I would like to reiterate here that affordable housing space, green building is non-existent in this country. That's where the maximum construction is going to happen. That's where the majority of our people are going to be there. If you're talking about in urban areas 1.1 crore, you can easily imagine easily about 7-8 crore people are going to stay there. So I'm sure commercial is the thing which we need to do. But I think this is where I think we are at a very, very alarming levels if we don't do something about affordable housing green. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ratra. So before I conclude and finish, let me give a 30-second to each one of our panelists. What is that one thing that you would recommend to the government of India to promote sustainable housing? Mr. Ratra, starting with only 30 seconds, 1 or 2 sentences.
I think as far as the government is concerned, I think as of now, all the initiatives lie in a very varied corners. There needs to be a construct which is common in force. Like somebody, Ministry of Environment is taking an X decision. So they recently changed the guidelines of the
so someone has to coordinate,
so
complement.
So somebody should be there, a pivotal body to do this.
Thank you.
And for something like, to take a cue from Sandra, something like this has to be ecosystem has to be developed in the country, by which these incentives can be very seamlessly given.
Okay. Sandra, 30 seconds, based on what your example is Germany.
Yes, I think, yeah, it is very important, or it's easier if there's already something there. And especially, of course, one bank cannot build up all these energy auditors, the programs, etc. So the government needs to be there, and I think that's why it's very important. In our case, it worked well. KfW and the government have a close connection, and I think that is very important.
Great. Mr. Deshpande.
So a lot of instructions have been issued. Now ease of doing business should come into place. Whatever instructions or approvals are there should come fast, so that the construction will be faster and our lending also will be better. Whatever the old issues that have happened will be sorted out fast.
Administrative reforms is what is needed. Apurva ji, last word to you.
So I think policy with a lot of teeth, enforcement and compliance has to be emphasized on, and then let the markets take care.
Thank you. Let the markets take care. I hand it over back to the MC. A round of applause for all our panelists. Thank you very much.
I thank all our speakers for such a thought-provoking session. I request Mr. Kumar to kindly felicitate our speakers. These paintings showcase Gond art, which comes with the belief that a good image brings good luck. The Gonds are major tribal communities of central India. The artists have used natural colors derived from charcoal, colored soil, plant sap, leaves and cow dung. This mystical art form is created by putting together dots and lines. I now request Dr. Winfried Dam to kindly present a small token of appreciation to our esteemed moderator. I request all of you to stay back for a group photograph.